they really do have to start knowing how to question the world and think more critically and more deeply about these complex, bigger things. And so it's a lot of practice if we can understand that's what it is. And it's not like an attack on you, the parent.
You. It's not personal. It's really
Hmm.
process of their individuation. I actually worry more about the kids that never push a boundary ever and are very overly compliant. Like, what is it about the environment that's not making them feel safe enough to express themselves? There's a really big gap between the parental expectation of really what their child's capacity is or where they're at and where their child is really at. So there's a disconnect there and nobody's happy because the child also feels deeply misunderstood.
You can't control them, but you can control you. And the way you show up, it'll allow you to still have influence. Your relationship is strong if it's real. So many kids are learning like their value is a grade, but they're also very aware of how little grades matter and how messed up the system is.
My daughter called me and she had a letter written to me. She talked about safety, she talked about time spent, and then said, I have like a great alternative, one of those dumb phones. To me, it felt so beautiful, like skill building for her as well. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Help Them Bloom. I'm so excited about today's episode because, oh my gosh, when she said yes, I got really excited. I kind of have this like Insta girl fan, therapist fan crush on her. I am with Kirsten Cobabe. She is a former therapist and her whole thing is teens. And she's the teen whisperer. If you guys have not checked out her Instagram, she drops like the best truth bombs ever. But what I love about her so much, and we'll get into it today, is that she helps you really kind of expand your perspective on teens. I think a lot of times we really kind of narrow teens down to these like really difficult, annoying, rebellious creatures. But there's so much more happening there. And I love this even for myself because I have a 10-year-old. She's like going slowly into this, maybe not so slowly into this territory. And I am feeling like I got the early childhood stuff. I got it, but I'm so now in front of this entire new territory. So I'm really, really excited to have her on here. Thank you so much for saying yes. I just want to kind of put out there that she does individual coaching, but she also runs this parenting coaching group. It's called Parenting Wave. We'll tag all the stuff in the show notes. So we're so excited. Thank you so much for being here, Kirsten.
I'm so happy to be here. Yay, I'm glad this worked out.
Me too. Okay, so let's jump right in. I
Let's go.
really want to kind of start by asking you what kind of happens in terms of the shift from childhood to tween teen in terms of like what we're seeing in front of us and why does it get so different?
Oh, a few things. Well, of course, there's the biology and the brain stuff, right? They're going through a massive developmental shift. And not only is their brain doing, you've heard of the pruning
Yeah.
probably and new connections and all this stuff. Their prefrontal cortex is still forming, but their limbic system is like, woo. So it's just
Mm.
emotional and dramatic. It can be. What's also happening for on the parents' end is all of a sudden this child who used to think I was amazing and kind of do whatever. And not that it's you always have an easy younger child, but they see you in a different light when they're
Yeah.
little, right? You're kind of like
They
a
kind of
god, and
idolize
then
you. Yeah.
exactly, like, you know all, and then teen years, they're like, "I'm not sure you know anything," or
Anything.
like, "What? I gotta test you out here," and it's a beautiful thing when we
Mhm.
understand the purpose of it and why that's happening because they really do have to start knowing how to question the world and think more critically and more deeply about these complex, bigger things, and so it's a lot of practice if we can understand that's what it is, and it's not like an attack on you, the parent.
You. It's not personal. It's really
Mhm.
process of their individuation, right? Can you
Exactly.
speak to that a little bit more in terms of like why is this so important for them?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, it's a natural and necessary stage. It just is going to happen. I mean, hopefully, because if it's not happening, then they're actually, that would be more concerning than the kid
Mhm.
who's talking back to you, in my opinion. It doesn't mean you want a kid who's disrespectful or something. And I'm never promoting that. It's just if we can surf the waves, so to speak, and understand why that's happening and be with it instead of like, hey, you can't talk to me that way, right? Instead
Yeah.
of being like, oh, great question.
Yeah.
Let's explore that. And so part of why it's so important is because you want them to be able to step out into the world as a capable young adult.
Mhm.
And they have to know who they are. And that means they have to sort of do a little bit of like, why do we do things like this? And here's
Mm.
what I believe. And hopefully the values you've instilled as a family, the important ones stick. But there is a little bit of that Push pull.
That's interesting because I always kind of name the same there's a parallel that happens even in the younger years, right? Like, even in as young as toddlerhood where they're pushing and resisting, and it's funny you said that about the kids that you worry more about the ones that maybe aren't. I always say the same thing. I'm like, I actually worry more about the kids that never push a boundary ever,
Yeah.
ever, and are very overly compliant. Like, what is it about the environment that's not maybe making them feel safe enough to express themselves, right? So it's interesting because parents are always like, when I say, what do you want for your kid? Like, as they grow and flourish into the world and become an adult, they'll name all these qualities, right? But then they don't want them showing up in childhood or adolescence at all.
Yeah, it reminds the parent usually that I have no control in this life and over this person really at all. That is scary. And I hear the same stuff all the time too. And so it's like, okay, that's the good and bad news because you can't control them, but you can control you. And the way you show up will actually,
Mhm.
it'll allow you to still have influence
Yeah.
if your relationship is strong, right? If it's real.
Yeah, but they want also these kids like, what I'm hearing is like, they want kids who are independent and persistent and driven and
Yes,
all this stuff, but it's hard to be like, I don't want that in my house, I just want that when they're older, right? But what
totally.
what they don't understand is this is the path to actually helping them get there, right? So and then they approach these tween, preteen, tween, whatever they call it now, and then teen years, and you're seeing like a huge kind of shift into that territory where they're exploring some of these things a lot more heavily. I remember learning this from Dan Siegel, who I love very, very much, where people used to think, well, maybe some people still think that this was like all attributed to hormone changes and where when the brain development is actually a huge factor. Can you kind of
Yeah.
share about that a little bit?
I mean, it's all connected, right? It's like there's some part about us, I think, as humans that sometimes can slip into it's this thing. And sometimes it is, maybe we can pinpoint something. And we also know everything is interconnected.
Connected. Mhm.
Yeah. The heart, the head, the hormones, the growth spurts, the school stuff, the sleep, the nutrition, the sunlight, the
Mhm.
connections and the meaning and community. And it all matters. And so, yeah, we can easily go, oh, it's just hormones, which to some degree, yes, that's a part of it. And we don't want to minimize like the absolute magic and
Mhm.
the energy that this process takes. And I mean, humans take a while to grow up.
Mhm. A long, very long while. I don't know that we ever
Yes,
really grow.
exactly.
I know. I remember when I would ask parents, like, "When do you believe, like, the prefrontal cortex is really kind of done?" And they were like, "I don't know, 5." And I'm like, "No, no. Add a 2 in front of there." Like and
Exactly.
mhm. So I think a lot of it is just, like, this misunderstanding of how these skills end up really kind of developing and when. And I think what happens is, parents often have I don't know if you probably find this in your work, there's a really big gap between, like, the parental expectation of really what their child's capacity is or where they're at, and where their child is really at. So there's a disconnect there, and nobody's happy because the child also feels deeply misunderstood, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it boils down to, at least what right now what's coming to me is a lot of people aren't growing up in community with all age people. And so actually when
Mm,
people then have babies or and have toddlers and have teens, they're like, what's going on? Because they haven't seen it along the way. Whereas at some point in I
mm.
think our history where we're sort of together a bit more than we are and all mixed in. And I also think,
More of like the
this
village kind of interest.
yeah, exactly. And so,
Mm,
I grew up very much immersed in a village, thank goodness. And with children and with adults and all kinds of ages. There was plenty of stuff that's really hard about my childhood, but then plenty of things that actually are very influential with my work. And so it can be surprising. I was a nanny for so long. I was a primary caregiver for some kids. Like I've been just in it since I was a teenager. And
yeah,
and so the things that happen with babies, like for me, aren't surprising, even though I haven't had a baby. My whole thing is about supporting the parents and the kids that are already here. And so
yeah.
I think it can be shocking for people that haven't been around babies and toddlers and teenagers and don't understand the really timeless and true developmental stages. And then
Mm,
also there's this other aspect of like, have you done your own kind of values review, life review,
mm,
inner childhood healing stuff, for
yeah,
lack of a better term? It sounds a little cheesy, but it's like if
it's
we
true.
don't do that assessment of who am I and what do I believe and why, and really make sure that we know who we are, because unfortunately, so much of our childhood is spent not getting sleep, taking tests,
Yeah,
going to school, all this stuff that doesn't actually often support. We're already whole when we're born, right?
it's
And then
yeah,
we're told to don't ask any questions and all this stuff. And it's like,
right,
wow, we just missed so much. And then all of a
right.
sudden, poof, we're 30. And we're
Yeah.
like, why is my 12-year-old being an asshole?
Yeah, 100%. In teenage years is probably one of the I think I remember learning that's one of the first, like, identity crises, right? Like, that's kind of like where, like, "Who am I?" Can you tell us a little more about when that happens? Around what ages?
Yeah, we're seeing it 9, 10, of course, right? There's big shifts that happen then. And for anyone looking for those developmental stages, I always really like Eric Erickson's work, and I
Mhm.
can't remember it all exactly right now, but he really kind of
The
shows
psychosocial stages.
exactly. And it's very much like, here's the thing that needs to happen. And if it doesn't, here's what stuck looks like, right?
Mhm.
Here's what not doing that will end up looking like. And we know that there are some grown-ups that are kind of stuck in some of
Stuck.
these
Right,
moments.
and you don't move on to the next stage until you master the stage before, so that's a really good
Exactly.
reference, so I'll kinda post that for everybody too. What is some advice that you could give to parents? Because my kind of mission in my work is really, really honing in and trying to really help parents preserve the relationship. I think the relationship between the parent and the child is everything. And now that I'm doing my own healing, I can see just how important, even more important that is, and how important I want to kind of transmit that to my own kids. How can parents kind of support this relationship during the more tumultuous time, in a different way? Because again, small kids will give you a hard time in a different way. First of all, I think maybe that's even perspective on that this isn't like worse or better. It's just different. Like some things have gotten smoother, but then we have different challenges. So how can we kind of step in there?
I agree with you, and we know it even from research that's just, like, over and over again, countless studies show, and not that we need studies for this, we can feel it in our bones, but
Yeah.
it's backed by all kinds of research. It's the quality of our relationships really manifests it into the quality of our life, and we
Mhm.
know that the parent-child relationship is so obviously so key, and there is this deep spiritual thread connection. I always say, like, you're just like, when your kid's not being honest with you, they know when you're not being honest with them. You guys have been attuned to each other since the beginning. And so
Forever.
that's a huge piece in the teen years. Authenticity and being really present and real. And there's a few things going on there. One, they just can smell bullshit. And thank goodness, we want them
Good.
to have that quality
That's a
and
good
skill out
skill.
in the world. It's a
Yeah.
really good skill. And so when you're having like a rough day and they're what's up your butt, mom, or whatever, instead of being mad about it, be like, it has been a day. You're totally tuned in. Like,
Mhm.
and here's how I'm gonna handle it. You don't put it on them, but you honor that they're sensing into something and it's real, right? Because you
Mm.
want them to not only trust themselves, but trust you. And so
Right.
these are the like quote little things that are actually huge. And
Mm.
so getting real with ourselves and being real humans, which again, so many of us were encouraged not to
Not
be.
to.
And
Show
I'll
up like
also
as
add,
this version of ourselves that's, like, got it all
yeah,
together all the time. Mhm.
polished and
Mhm.
performing and all this stuff. And it's like actually just be real. And it's so important for your relationship and for that trust that I spoke of. And it's also you want them to also know what that feels and looks like
Mm.
and that coming back to oneself piece. And I think a lot of people are doing that right now, realizing, holy moly, this whole rat race or this whole thing that's been happening. Like how much of this is me and how much of it has kind of been imposed on me. And
Mm.
don't we want young people to live a life that's like healthy and balanced and beautiful as hard as the world is?
And authentic to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is also there's a vulnerable time because of that identity formation. There's so much coming at kids and families and parents right now. And we want to be really aware that this is a very vulnerable time. And so there's a
Mm.
lot of preparation for teens and a lot of protection. And so we want to be proactive about how to support them because there's a lot of trying things on, a lot of ideas. And so I really believe that.
I want to tell you about this app that I discovered that is super helpful. It's a parenting app and it's called Wizer, Wizzer. It's a parenting app that uses AI to give you personalized support for hard stuff like tantrums, sleep struggles, screen time battles, and many more things. It provides 24/7 expert backed tools and real time coaching. It also helps you raise kids with empathy, emotion regulation, and life skills that matter the most. They believe that no parent should feel alone, and that's why they created this safe, judgment-free community to connect and grow with other people who get it. They are providing my listeners with a 2-month free trial with a promo code BLOOM2FREE. That is BLOOM number 2 FREE. I want to take a quick break from this episode to share more about my services offered at Hatch and Bloom. Whether you're seeking personalized one-on-one guidance or insightful group learning, we have the right support for you. Our private sessions provide you with the tools and strategies needed to support your child's growth. So take the next step in nurturing your child's potential and book a session with me today. Please visit hatchandbloom.co. That's .co. Or you can email me at evelyn@hatchandbloom.co. Now, back to the episode. We live in this environment, in this world where, like, for example, academics. Academics are, they're important in where we live and how to get ahead. And I also don't really care personally about
Yeah.
her grades and about her doing 1,000 hours of homework. But it's like me against the system. Like, it's very complicated. How do you navigate, like, supporting your teen? Because I could see where the stuff becomes like cookie cutter, like we just got to do what we got to do, and you start to lose yourself, right?
Mhm.
So part of me is like, I don't want to push her to go into a route that I know is just because she's just checking off boxes. But I also live in this world. So like I don't really know how to navigate that. And I don't know if you have an answer for that. Maybe there's not an answer for that.
Well, I think it's something so many people are experiencing right now, so
Mm.
many families, kids, parents, because
Like, I
we're
hear this for
also
college. It's insane
5th
too.
grade, people start thinking about
That's
this
what we
stuff.
have, 5th grade. So
Mhm.
there's a huge shift this year. There's tears all the time, and it really is like a drastic shift from last year. So it wasn't even like any sort of setup for this. And then I hear also, that college applications are just the level of anxiety of these teens is it, if I was anxious a million years ago, I can only imagine what it is now. So like, how do you help these families?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my background just so
Okay.
people have that. Went to college for 7 years. School, I loved because I was getting feedback, which I didn't have at home. I luckily had a broader, healthy village, but my parents really weren't great at this connection thing. And
Got
so
it.
part of the reason why I'm so passionate about it and why I believe in it so much, and I have really beautiful relationships in my life, and I'm not
Mhm.
mad at my parents, but oftentimes our voids lead to our values. And if we can
Yeah.
be empowered about
Oh,
it,
I love
and
that.
not coming at it from a wounded place, it can be a beautiful gift for the world. And so, a little bit of background. And I also will say that I don't have really regrets in life because I trust that I made the best decisions I could and I'm, a good human and I learn from things. However, I will say, I don't know if I would have gone to college for 7 years if I would go back and do it again. And I also think that in the almost 2026 we're heading into, it's only going to become less and less important. It's
Mhm.
also going to continue to become more available. Like Harvard has free classes. You can also go and audit
Right.
classes. You don't have to pay 100 grand anymore
Yeah.
or have debt forever. It's less and less important. We're even going to have, AI robots in
Yeah.
surgery
Yeah,
rooms
yeah,
with
yeah.
doctors. I'm only saying all that, not because there's a straightforward answer or a one way. It's just something to think about because I think it does become so typical when you're in the system, and this is any system.
Mhm.
When it becomes so big, it loses the point. It
Mm.
starts to just value the wrong things. It starts
Uh-huh.
to get messy, confusing, silly, dated, all this stuff. And so you're not the only one experiencing this. Basically, every family that I know and work with is experiencing this. And I think what I like to think about is at the end of my life, what will I wish
Mm.
I did more and or did less of?
Less
Or
of.
like, what do I wish I prioritized with my
Yeah.
kid? What really matters? And so many kids are learning like their value is a grade, but they're also very aware of how little grades matter and how messed up the system is. And so that's a weird experience to have when you're
Right.
going through such an important developmental stage. My mom or dad cares about my grade, but I know that what I'm learning isn't even
Doesn't
relevant.
even
So I
matter.
don't even
That's
know, how can I trust my parents?
yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's the stuff I think
Yeah,
about. And
and
it
then
doesn't
you
mean,
finish and
yeah,
you, like, literally have 0 life skills because what you learned is, like, I
not
don't know,
relevant.
not relevant at all. Like, something really
Exactly.
random, not like how to do your taxes. You know?
Exactly. How to do your taxes, how to be friends with your neighbor, how to like
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
dialogue, how to,
Emotional
all,
intelligence, like, no
yes,
yeah.
emotional intelligence, skill and like survival skills or
Yeah.
whatever, all kinds of stuff, how to,
Yeah.
trade in the stock market or save money or all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're missing so much. And not only are we missing all those skills, which are super important and should be prioritized, we're missing being with each other in
Mm.
a real way that actually matters. Because for some kids, it's like, just try to get a C and pass it because that teacher sucks or that's not your
Yeah.
genre course curriculum. That's not your class. Like it's not your natural gift. And actually, let's go with what you're really awesome at.
Good at
And we
yeah,
know that when
like,
we do that
finding
with
the
kids,
strengths. Yeah.
exactly, and lead from that place because we know actually that that leads to more success and more confidence and intrinsic confidence and just we're not here to be good at every math,
Yeah.
every core curriculum. We're here
Yeah.
to like be who we already are, who we came in as.
I love that. That's so powerful and it's so true. And sometimes it really is tuning into like what really matters and hearing your own voice. And sometimes the noise can get so noisy that it's hard to kind of find clarity in that. And also probably finding like-minded people helps because sometimes it feels like you're like the only one feeling this way, right? Like in a sea
Right.
of there's so much pressure in this other direction that I think finding like-minded people to be like, "No, we kind of see things a little bit differently or our values are a little bit differently," kinda helps. It's probably hard to feel very alone in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to feel alone and imagine how our kids feel if they're like,
Mhm.
why does everyone care about this?
Right,
And
right.
so then also let's show them how
I will
tuning
see
out
that
the
on
noise
my
is.
parent chat. I'll tell you what I see on these 5th grade chats is extreme anxiety on the parents' part. I'm sure that
Yeah.
this is probably something you work with as well, because
Oh, yeah.
it's not even the kid like, it is the kids, but it's very clear where this is trickling down from as well, right? Like, there is so much anxiety over, like, every little, like, "Did you log in? Did everybody check this? What's the paper? What's" and also, I don't remember my parents ever knowing what my homework was. I really don't. Like, that wasn't a thing now. So, it wasn't a thing back then, and it feels like now it's like the parents' homework. Do you see this happening with the people you work with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's this, and that's reinforced by the school system that has an agenda. I mean, that's it. Just like stay in school is the agenda. Keep going to school, go to college, all that stuff. And that's just the track. And then it's also the wounding that many parents have around school and getting the right answer right away and knowing everything and doing it right and being a good girl
And
or
how it
whatever.
reflects on our parenting probably, right? Like,
Exactly.
you're being a good parent by being responsible.
Exactly.
But right. I sat in the back to school night, and I was like I felt like I literally got all the assignments for the year. They were like, "Here's the online class pages where you can check the homework, where you can check the work, but where you can" and I was like, "What? I'm not the one in 5th grade. Like, why?
Also, why is
Why?"
there homework? We know this is not even a helpful anything for kids. Like, maybe a little bit
100%.
or maybe the thing they're into, but, like, kids should be going home, in my
And
humble
going
opinion,
outside and
and going outside
playing. I
and being
know.
with friends and family and all that stuff. And one of the things I hear from parents mostly is like, "Thank you for saying that," because 'cause I'm like, "Who gives a shit?"
I
Honestly, is what I usually say.
100%
And a
agree.
parent's like, "Thank you for saying
Yes.
that." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yes." And also, if that's inside you, listen to that because it is
Yeah.
gonna keep being noisy, and everyone's gonna say whatever about your kid, and
Yeah.
you know your kid,
Yeah.
and you know what matters.
And I guess maybe sometimes it really ends up being like, is this the right fit for my kid and for our family? Right. This school has been actually really good at like, there has been no homework until now, but but it's like the on switch got switched really, really hardcore. So now there's like, they're not used to this. But, I love that we're talking about this. This is so, so big. Just like in general, do you see this? Because I see this happening a lot in the younger years. Do you see that parents are like way more involved in like the everyday things of their children and like have a hard time kind of separating and letting kids like fail and like take
Mhm.
risks? And okay, what's your
Yeah.
experience?
Kids need to climb trees when they're little, they need to fall down and scrape their knees, and it doesn't mean they're not wearing a helmet on a bike, it just means, we gotta like, we're here on planet Earth, it is intense, we do as much safety as we can, while also allowing kids and people to live, and so, we almost pendulumed, it feels like, because I don't remember my parents knowing anything about me, and
Uh-huh.
that's not ideal either, like,
Yeah.
neglectful parenting is not ideal, it's
Somewhere in
not
the
good for
middle.
the child, yeah. And neither is this overbearing, like micromanaging, knowing too much and being so blended and enmeshed. That's not helpful either. And so that middle path is, if anyone just the real core of it is authoritative parenting, right? It's love and limits. It's both. It's also like get your values straight, get your head and
Mhm.
your heart straight so
Mm.
that you know your inner compass, you know what matters in your family. And you say to that teacher, you know what, we don't do homework in this house. So
Mm.
they need to do it in class. Or can this school not give my kid homework? Sometimes it just takes asking, and the school's like, actually, yeah, that is an option. They just
Oh,
don't
wow.
tell
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess you never know until you ask.
you. Uh-huh.
You have any strategies for people to like kind of hone in on what their values are?
Yeah, I think it's really taking space, um, dedicating some time and space, whether it's a trusted friend or some sort of guide who's maybe walked some of this before, where you really just ask those questions, and you even identify what happened when I was little that was hard. What age was I? What were the things that I remember that stuck out that were great and also not
Mm.
great? And so, because those are the things that are still with us,
Mm.
and we can absolutely integrate anything we've been through. And the reason stuff is still stuck typically is because we didn't have support when it happened.
Yeah.
That's the whole ACEs test stuff where it's like
Yeah.
something bad happens. If you're not supported, it becomes stress and trauma and stuck. If you do
Right.
have support, then it's like it can be integrated, it can be smooth, and
Mhm.
it's not a thing you're then navigating at 45 in the same way that if it got stuck.
Mhm. Mhm. And sometimes we don't know maybe the values that are really ours versus just how we've been programmed.
Exactly.
So, okay. So I love this sitting and doing this work alongside your teens is probably a beautiful, it's a chance for you to also kind of find yourself, right? That's really what it sounds like.
Yeah, if you don't remember anything that was hard for you, or if you can't do that, if it's like very foreign to be like, I don't even know how to ask these questions or listen to myself,
Yeah.
that also
Yeah.
comes from our culture of being just busy and rushed and not sleeping
Yeah.
and homework and all that.
Yeah.
Look at what's bugging you about your kid.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah,
There's your
it's your
mirror,
trigger.
right?
That's what it is.
Hmm.
And I also wanna kind of debunk this theory or this fear that people have that you're gonna lose this hierarchy, like, if you're actually going to, collaborate with your kid instead of just you're the voice that really kind of sets the rules. That's yes, you set the rules, but, like, without an ability for your child to have a voice, number 1. Number 2, apologies to your kids. Like, I think these kind of mixed opinions because parents fear they're going to lose authority. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I love speaking to this because what happens is we again pendulum and parents start to think that there's this way that this can happen with anything. Like having control sometimes can be self justification for cruel behavior or
Mhm.
rigidity. Same thing with apologizing. It can become groveling and tiptoeing, and all that stuff is
Mm.
just too much in all any direction.
Right. It feels like
And
nobody's
so
in charge in the second one, right? It's
yeah,
like,
and
okay,
that's so
that's
scary.
scary
I
for a
mean,
kid.
it's so
Mhm.
scary, right? It's like I need someone who's going to say no to me and who's going to help keep me safe and who's going to help teach me how to keep myself safe. All that stuff is so critical. And the way we do that is not by yelling and being incredibly aggressive or rigid. It's also not about being permissive and neglectful and tiptoeing. It's about that middle approach where you're like, hey, I realized what I said earlier did not land, or like, I realized I didn't listen to you earlier. Here's how I'm going to do that differently next time. So it's not just apologizing. We have to actually just identify and be accountable and then say, here's my plan.
Sure.
And you can hold me to that because I'm
Yeah.
growing with you. And this is what we
Yeah.
do as humans. We have a growth mindset in this house. And here's how we do that, right?
And that's really good modeling for them to deal
Totally.
with situations like that. I wanna bring up something that my daughter did the other way, my 10-year-old daughter. She obviously has been asking me for a phone for 3 years, which she knows she's not gonna get, right? She just at this point, it's just a waste of everybody's breath. But she did something really cool. So I wanna kinda demonstrate this because I love that she did this. She called me this was 2 days ago. She called me and she had a letter written that she wrote to me. And it literally first highlighted all the reasons she knows I'm not giving her a phone. She talked about safety, she talked about time spent, she talked about all these things, and then said, I have like a great alternative basically for like basically one of those dumb phones. She's like, I'm missing out on talking to my friends, but I know that I shouldn't have social media. I know that I shouldn't browse the internet, like all these things. And then literally sent me the link to the thing she had found that was a really good alternative, I which she doesn't know yet, but I'm fine with it. Like I'm going to say yes, but I just loved her process. Like I think this was to me it felt so beautiful. Like I feel like I don't know. I think that a lot of times we don't kind of open up to having these kinds of conversations with our kids or don't give them a chance. Like I think this is like skill building for her as well.
I love that. And I think and this doesn't mean that whatever your kid is asking for or making a case for, you say yes to if it's not healthy, right? Or beneficial or good. However, sometimes it is okay or they found a good alternative or
Yeah.
whatever that is. And so, in the piece and it shows that she cares. I mean, teenagers will work hard for the things they
For
want.
the
That's
things
for
they
sure.
want.
They will
Yeah.
wake up early, they will
She's the
do
problem
research.
solver.
Yeah, exactly. And so this isn't to say like we say yes to everything because they made a good case, but it is like you put a lot of time and energy into this. And then it's step by step because when she gets older, when she then is and even now, maybe if her friends have smartphones, it's like we got to prepare them for the stuff that can happen. Because even if you give your kid a regular smartphone and you have parental controls, they're still going to see stuff. Stuff can happen. Their friends have phones. And so it's like taking even those conversations in age appropriate ways
Yeah.
as you keep going through the years, where it's like, hey, I want to make sure that you know what could happen,
What
what's to
can
come,
happen?
how you're going to
Yeah.
handle it. that you can always come to me. And like
Yeah.
if there's any worry you have, we have this, code word, or like if I haven't been listening to you, like tap me on the shoulder,
Yeah.
whatever. Really be proactive. And that's what helps obviously teens know they can come to you, but also we gotta help them know how to keep themselves safe.
But
Because you're
I
not always
love
with
this.
them. Yeah.
I love this thing that I had read once that was you I don't know, you probably came across it on Instagram, but it was, like, basically some dad's, like, policy he had with his, like, teen girl that was, like, a no questions asked kind of policy where it's like, "If you need me to pick you up at any time and you're out somewhere and you're not feeling safe, like, no questions asked, I'm coming." And I loved the idea behind that, which is really like, I am on your team forever and ever, and I think that kids sometimes grow into this stage where they're so worried about what their parents will think, about getting in trouble, about being judged, about the repercussions of what's happening that they will not come to you, right?
Mhm.
And that's the last thing we want. We don't want to lose that thread of like this is the lifeline we have with them. And sometimes it can
Yeah.
be huge, like a huge issue, right?
Yeah.
So I think kind of building on that foundation since they're little is like so important. This is why we talk about in my house about very hard things all the time. And something I noticed that actually has really helped my eldest is when I talk about myself as a kid. And I actually talk about all the things I had a hard time telling my parents because it's true. I literally lived in silence with most of my emotional experiences.
Yeah.
And I talk about how I wish that was different and how it was very lonely and how this is like very I want to create something very different for her and so that she knows she can come to me and like I'm number 1 is I'm on her team. Right?
Right.
Number 2 we'll figure out what we need to figure out. But and it has helped so much because she is starting to come to me with like really hard things that I look back and I'm like I would have never been able to talk to my parents this way.
No.
And they're great, but it just was not the dynamic. It wasn't the culture, it wasn't the dynamic. It was they were present, they were loving, but it just I don't think I ever got those cues of like it's safe to talk about these things here. This is what, we can all handle this.
It's so important. And if and teens are watching, they're paying attention to what you're able to handle, not
Exactly.
even just about them in life. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means they're paying attention. They're getting the memo. And so whether you're reminding them or you're bringing up the tough topics, because if we think about how hard it is for some of us to talk about some things, even with
Yeah.
our friends, maybe, or our own
Yeah.
parents, imagine how hard that would be for some young ones, especially if they're getting the memo they can't or they shouldn't or they'll get in trouble. Because, a lot of parents think they don't that their kids and teens don't care about what
Mm.
you think they so do. And even for things like I love that example with that dad, and that is it, and that's on the adult to create that and to make
Yes.
sure that that's strong and real. Even with stuff like curfews, and it's a little off topic, but it's like I'd rather my kid not be rushing home to get home by 11 or midnight or whatever the curfew is. I want them to get home safely, and I
Yeah.
want to know where they are, and I want to know all the things. Not all the things. I mean, you never know all
Right.
of them, but
Yeah, I was the one
it's that
speeding because I was so stressed
exactly,
about being
and that's
home.
terrifying. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like,
It's
yeah,
so
you don't want your
true.
kid hopping in a car with someone driving fast or drunk just to get home on time. That's not
Exactly.
the point.
Exactly. But we have to create that nature of the relationship where it's not so fear-based that it's like if I break any rule or I think these are conversations that are so important since really young. So
If
really
we're not
talking to your
yeah,
kids since they're young, really starting tiny. This is where
tiny.
my work and your work goes beautifully,
I
complements
mean,
each other.
I worked with young people, little young people for so long, babies, a nanny again,
Mm,
live-in nanny, all the things, and it was just every day for me at least. This is how deeply I think about things. These aren't even, my kids, but it's like I'm thinking about her later. I'm very present, but I'm like narrating what we're doing and
mhm.
all the things that I'm connecting to also the teen years and all that. Even though I'm not going to be here with her, right? Even as the simple things with toddlers where it's like they want to wash the dishes, we've got nowhere to go and
Yeah.
I can slow down for you to do that because you know what? They're going to be a teenager one day and I want them to know because this is just part of life, not a
Yeah.
thing that you have to do because you're, I
Not a
don't know,
thing you get a
punished or
sticker for
something.
either or whatever.
No,
Yeah.
no.
No,
This is
yeah,
just
it's
how
just
we do it.
part of our household. I also have a 2-year-old who wants to do everything. So
Everything,
it's
right?
great. It's great and frustrating and great and
Takes 5
and
hours
painful.
instead of 1 hour.
7 meltdowns in between, but we get it done.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, leave us, if you can, with maybe 1 or 2 biggest takeaways that you come up maybe in your parenting group that really kind of help parents kind of feel a little bit calmer entering into this territory because I know it can feel scary. I know it can feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but also I'm scared to let my child out into the world in this way.
Yeah, it is scary. Being present with what's scary. Like instead of trying to make yourself not scared or run from the fear, because it is totally natural. Your kid's driving or they're going on a date or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And you really realize I have no control.
Yeah.
Being with that discomfort instead of living from the fear as you're trying to run from it is a those are very different things, right? Because we know that as we how we do one thing's how we do everything. If
Mm,
we're navigating from fear, we're not in love and we're not thinking in a steady way. And so go into that fear. What is the fear? And then you're
mm,
going to find some of the things that happen to you or some of the things you're scared of happening. And it's natural because you're here to protect your kid. Like
mm,
that's all here. You want them to succeed and spread their wings, but you want them to do it safely. So being present with what's coming up instead of we're so good at running from stuff in this
yeah,
culture, from any kind of pain.
yeah,
And the magic is, and we know this from all the Rumi quotes and everything, going into it when you can, as you can. I even like to with some of the people I work closely with. I'm like, let's go into that worst case scenario. Okay, then what? Then what? Then what? We keep
mhm,
going until we get to that place that they can actually exhale. It tricks the brain too into thinking you've
mhm,
already lived through it, and then
right,
you're not orienting from it, and you can be more supportive, more steady, more sound, more
mhm,
sane, which is so helpful for your team because that's all they want from you is to know that you're like a rock, like you said, you can handle it all because
yeah,
they're just going to keep crashing like a wave and you're their shore, right? Or whatever metaphor you like. Again, you don't have to do it perfectly. And so
yeah,
the other thing I'll say is when you don't know what to say or how to respond, I'm not a big fan of scripts, although I know they can be supportive to get reoriented. More than a perfect script, you want to be present and go, that's really important. Okay, I'm just taking a deep breath
mm,
with clarity for you. I want to really offer my best here. We can slow down. We can tell them we're slowing down. We
100%.
can show them that. That helps them know that they can do that
Yeah,
too and not
yeah,
just react.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Or, yeah, I wanna think about that. I wanna come back to you with that. A different version of same thing I say with the little ones where you need to take a pause and you need to be like, "I'm
Yeah.
gonna go get a drink of water," or, "I'm gonna go do
Yeah.
this," if you're feeling so dysregulated. I love that. So slowing down, leaning into the fear. I love that quote of "The only way out is through." And it's
Really
true.
true.
Mhm. It is.
It's really hard. It's really true. And like part of parenting, I think too, we realize, oh shoot, no one's gonna do this for me or help me or
Mhm.
save me, especially if your parents don't really, maybe if they're not in alignment with some stuff that can be hard. And so it feels like a lot is on parents' shoulders right now. I'm doing the reparenting and my parents are old and I'm raising this teenager in this crazy
Yes.
world.
There's a lot
So
on our generation. Do you find that the parents you work with have sometimes a hard time with the shift in how much they are needed, how that letting go piece? That's probably really hard
I'm glad
at
you
this
brought that up.
point.
I was
Yeah.
thinking about that this morning,
Yeah.
actually. And so, yeah, if your entire identity is wrapped around being needed by your child, that's going to be devastating when they don't need you in the same way or as much. And so, it's really important to have other things going on. They're
Mhm.
not responsible for being your joy or even needing you. Like, best case scenario, they don't need you, but they want you,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I
That's the
love
magic.
that. Yes. Because if not, we can get into tricky dynamics where they really feel like they need to take care of us in that way, and that's not fair to them. But what's the youngest age, like a parent of what age do you see?
Parent of, I mean, 9, 10.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not at
Oh,
all.
I could
Yeah.
talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for your time. Where
Thank
can
you.
parents find you as they're going into these, tricky ages?
Yeah, Kirsten Cobabe everywhere. And then if you want to join my group, it's so great. I've got a couple master classes coming. Sometimes I offer free calls when someone signs up. I'll do little fun little gifts, and we've got all kinds of good stuff there, like mini podcast resources. And it's a great group with amazing guests too. Actually, I would love you to be on a guest list.
Yay, and that's
Yeah,
Parenting Wave. Is that
that's
its own website?
Yep.
Kirsten, thank you so much. This was awesome. I appreciate your time. So
Thank
lovely.
you.
Hey, everyone, it's Evelyn. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your support truly means the world to me. If you're interested in hosting a parenting workshop, I'd love to connect. Whether it's a private session for parents, a school event, or a corporate workshop, I'm here to help bring valuable insights and strategies to your community. Let's chat and make it happen. Please visit hatchandbloom.co. That's .co. Or you can email me at evelyn@hatchandbloom.co.